Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. In this episode we're dealing with points 23 to 41, so that is 18 bullet points on the What Else Do We Know series on Christopher Watts. This is episode 2 in that series and dealing with the mid-August to the end of August section of the timeline. If you found yesterday's video on the psychology interesting, just the discussions on Nicole Kessinger possibly not knowing about the pregnancy and why that was possible or probable or not. There's a part 2 to that on Patreon, the dynamics of Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger that everyone is missing. Quite an interesting episode, so head on over there. Thank you to the 93, 94 patrons that are already there. It's good to see the channel growing. Before we begin with today's episode, apologies for the error at the beginning of the episode yesterday. Just the caption that was incorrectly dated July 25th instead of June 25th. I did pin a kind of an announcement that that the error was incorrectly referenced. I think in the actual video itself, it is that the whole timeline is right. I've had very little sleep over the past few days. I'm trying to reach my own deadline of getting the Patrick Frazee book done by the end of this weekend. I always find the last slog when writing a book very hard, because one wants to end on a high note and one wants to end with the best research and the best sort of insights. And so I have been really racking my brain and trying to balance everything. And so yeah, I'm definitely a bit worn out. I'll be very glad when this book is done. It took quite a bit out of me. Anyway, with that being said, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please do. Please like, share, leave a comment. Please share amongst your networks. Please spread the word. If you've got anything you want to share, especially any information, any insights, any thoughts, please do. And let's get started. So point number 23 deals with the photos taken of the Watts family on a family trip to the trampoline park in Myrtle Beach. The photographer Michelle Greer said that she didn't see Christopher talking to his wife. Well, we know who he was talking to. And what is kind of interesting there is it sort of takes two to tango. Chris Watts was probably talking to Nicole Kessinger, but equally Kessinger is probably talking to him as much as possible to sort of reassure herself that he was still her guy. I think there was maybe mutual reassurance going on. One wonders what Shan'ann sort of thought of it, like, Watts is acting weird, what did she make of it? Now, and I think she may have potentially confused his standoffishness with just the way that he was normally, that he was sort of in his own little world, that he was, introverted and just quiet or whatever. She may also have misinterpreted it as his being a bit glum because of Nutgate, a bit stung by everything that happened around that, and maybe Shan'ann thought, well, look, you get over it, I'm gonna carry on with my thing, and hopefully you will get on board with the family eventually. Point number 34, Shan'ann was 34 years old when she died. She was a year older than her husband. This is also quite an interesting point, just the fact that Watts married an older woman. So this whole idea, I think a lot of people are correct just in saying that Watts was quite a quiet guy. He was used to towing the line, and marrying someone a little bit older also suggests that he was the sort of it was almost like the roles were reversed, that Shan'ann was almost the man of the house, the person wearing the pants. And the age gap, although it's not huge, seems to show that Shan'ann was sort of the leader and the sort of older, more mature personality in terms of the household. Number 25, Christopher Watts was originally from Oklahoma. So one wonders how the family actually ended up in North Carolina. Shan'ann was originally from New Jersey, and one also wonders how they ended up from, going from there to North Carolina. Was it some kind of military thing, or was it something to do with getting a job? What was it? Number 26, and bear in mind this has got to do with the knowledge that was known and familiar to us at the time. So in other words, in August, this is what we knew. And what we knew was that the Watts family had undertaken overseas trips and appeared to be going through a more prosperous phase. These included vacations to New Orleans, Toronto, Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, Puerto Vallarta in Mexico, Las Vegas, and San Diego. And then we know Shan'ann's last trip was to Phoenix, Arizona. It's quite a lot of traveling. And so obviously the impression was that the family were actually wealthy and happy and thriving. Point number 27, Christopher's colleagues seemed to be aware that he was having an affair. This is really interesting, that as early on as the middle of August, the media was sort of saying that some people did seem aware. I'm not saying all his colleagues, but some of his colleagues seemed to be aware that he was having an affair. And it's interesting, more than a year later you've heard nothing about that. You haven't heard them talking about that. It's just disappeared, right? Number 28, their list of assets included their home valued at $400,000, a 2006 Ford Mustang with more than 97,000 miles on it, wedding rings, and a dog which they valued at $5. This list of assets obviously wasn't based on 2018. I think it was based on 2015. And so obviously Watts sold that Ford Mustang, his vehicle, around about that time. And at the time of the murder, Watts essentially didn't have a vehicle. The work truck wasn't his. He wasn't free to use it as he pleased, and so he effectively didn't have a car. So much for the prosperous Watts family in terms of that. Point number 29, the list of creditors that's from the 2015 bankruptcy filing included Ford Motor Company, so he was still paying off the debt for that car, and Toys R Us. Point number 30, their debts included $11,245 in student loans, according to Denver, U.S. bankruptcy court records. It would be interesting to know exactly what those student loans were. We know that Chris Watts studied to be a NASCAR technician. I don't think he ultimately became one, but we know he studied that. And Shan'ann studied to be a nurse, and she also didn't ultimately become a nurse. Number 31, Choice Recovery in Columbus, Ohio, was seeking to recover $740 for health and chiropractic services. Again, this is going back to 2015. One wonders exactly what that was. It may have something to do with the car accident Shan'ann was in. It would also be good to know more about that car accident, but it seems like it may have been to do with a damaged spine, maybe that neck vertebra, maybe something to do with her neck. We know that she had that neck operation later on. And then another interesting fact at number 32 that may have escaped some people. Byron Falls, who bought Shan'ann Watts' house in Belmont, west of Charlotte, said that the Watts family had been in a hurry to sell and left behind the furniture as part of the sale. Okay, again, that's kind of one wonders what was going on there. Was that normal? But just the fact that they'd been in a hurry to sell and then they were in financial trouble a couple of years later suggests, and I know people are going to crucify me for saying this, some people, but it suggests being a little bit perhaps reckless with money, that you have a debt and you run away from it. You don't pay your dues, you don't settle, and you sort of get yourself out of that situation. That may not be the case, but often when people leave somewhere that they live in a hurry, it can be because of financial problems that they're trying to escape. Like I said, it may not be the case here, but it also could be the case. Number 33, the Watts family appeared to be going through a rocky period when they moved from North Carolina to Colorado in 2012. I'm not quite sure what I based that on. I'm not sure if that's just something that I got from the media, but I think what that meant was financially, and in terms of they going from one place to another, and so now you've got to find a job, you've got to find a new home, and all that kind of thing. Again, you could say no, it's not true, they were actually absolutely fine. Again, I can't, since I didn't provide the source here, I can't be completely clear why I said this, but it was something, everything that I picked up in the media I placed here just as something that I'd learned that I thought was interesting. Point 34, the address of their home in a quiet subdivision 10 minutes drive east of Frederick, 2825 Saratoga Trail. So this was the first time that I'd learned the address, and then I provided a map for it. And Saratoga Trail is due north of Denver, and also Centennial, and it's actually not far from Boulder as well, where the John Benet Ramsey case took place, and it's also not that far from Patrick Frazier's ranch in Florissant and Cripple Creek. It's around about between, depending on how you drive, 130 to 150 miles north. Well, Florissant is 130 miles south, but it's on sort of a north-south axis. Thornton, the sort of area, not quite where Kissinger lived, but sort of that area, and the area that the Watts family wanted to move to was that sort of Brighton, Thornton area. I think Kissinger's father lives in Arvada. That's also where her first interview was with the FBI. And then Westminster, I think, was the mall where they went to watch a movie. And then if you look at another map, just zooming in, you can see a couple of other neighborhoods, Dacano, Frederick, Firestone. Firestone was the site of a massive explosion that killed the inhabitants in 2017 based on an Anadarko gas leak. And then Dacano is south of Frederick. The Dacano PD were involved in the investigation. As far as I remember, I could be wrong, I shouldn't really be saying this, but I think the drone pilot was from the Dacano PD. And then if you look at another map, you can see that Saratoga Trail lies sort of at the bottom of a figure of 6 kind of loop. We know when Watts went home, he sort of took quite a long way around, going right to the west side. Sorry, hang on. The west side, and probably disposed of clothing and possibly blankets at that point, maybe even containers, plastic containers. What's also interesting to note with that is where the Watts home is at the bottom of a T-junction. So you kind of have a lot of line of sight from 2 rows of houses right to the front door of the Watts home. And then there's also a row of houses right behind them, which just means that they're completely surrounded in terms of eyes and ears and to some extent some cameras. On June 22nd, Shan'ann wrote on Facebook, "Success is my best revenge," and one wonders what exactly she meant by that. Revenge for what? Maybe she didn't mean anything by it, but one could also ask, did Shan'ann get her revenge? Like, did she achieve success? If you think about the 6, 7, 8 weeks that followed that post, she had to go to North Carolina for work, and her Facebook video output dropped precipitously between then and August. Number 36, on August 8th, 5 days before the murders, Shan'ann posted the following message on Facebook. 2 loads of laundry, dusted the whole house, cleaned the refrigerator and pantry, went grocery shopping to 2 stores with the kids, took Celeste to a doctor's appointment, emptied 7 suitcases and 3 backpacks, fed kids 1,000,000 times, showered, went through 6 weeks of mail, washed the kitchen floor, cleaned up a kid's disaster and repacked my suitcase for Arizona this Friday, all while 4 months preggo. And so if Kissinger, for example, had read this post, she would have known, for sure that Shan'ann was pregnant. Of course, when you look at that, it's quite a long message. It's quite a long thing to read through. So you may have just stopped somewhere by 2 loads of laundry, dusted the house, and not gotten through to the whole message. That's the other thing with Facebook. You either read a lot or you look at the pictures. Some people do both, but you browsing, you look, you move along, you look, and so you might miss things that way. Maybe you won't, maybe you will. The upbeat nature of this message is worth bearing in mind. Shan'ann had said that the first week of August had been the worst of her life, and so on August 8th she's sort of telling everyone that how great things are and how strong she's feeling, and meanwhile we know she wasn't. She was feeling weak when she stood up. So it's just important to juxtapose these spiels with what was actually going on and what we know was going on. Point 37, 4-year-old Bella has been described as a talkative child for her age. I'm not really sure what to make of that. I was kind of under the impression, especially now, all this time later, that Bella wasn't so talkative, and that maybe that she was less talkative than average. Maybe she was also somewhat introverted. So I'm not sure if that's accurate, but maybe it does just refer to how expressive she was for her age at that time. And that, of course, can vary. Number 38, a pair of women's shoes had been kicked off and laid by the front door. That was established very early on, I think, by Nicole Atkinson. I think she mentioned this, I think, to everybody, and it just appeared in the media. So this was firmly established quite early on, that surely if Shan'ann had left, she would have taken the shoes that she wore all the time. She would have just slipped them on her way out. So why didn't she? Number 39, a suitcase apparently from an Arizona trip stood at the bottom of the stairs. So this was also something that was either leaked to the media or that the media simply just got hold of. But people were sort of wondering, what does this mean that her shoes were there and that her suitcase was at the bottom of the stairs? So very early on people were just wondering, so what does this mean? Did Shan'ann go somewhere? If she did, why not take her suitcase with her? She had everything she needed in it, a toothbrush, toothpaste, whatever, change of clothing. Then point number 40, the bodies were dumped at a worksite 40 miles east of the family home. It's important to stress there that was a work site, so it was a place that Watts was very familiar with and that other people wouldn't be. It would be very limited access, and even if you had access, you wouldn't know how to get access to the infrastructure, and also you wouldn't know where to start looking either. So in terms of disposal, it was actually quite a clever site, and the police struggled for days to actually retrieve the bodies. Number 41, the oil site has been identified as Survey 319 with GPS coordinates 40.21624374 and 0104.36667. And I must say, when I was researching this case, what I found really interesting and exciting just from a true crime writer perspective was just the quality of data and the fact that you can also rely on modern technology, Google Earth, Google Maps, to go to, you can literally make use of space satellites to zoom in on this crime scene and get to know the topography, and it's almost just like flying in a spaceship and getting from one side of the world and being able to completely zoom in on a crime scene and start figuring it out, just looking. And everybody was doing that. And so as you zoomed in from space, you saw this strange kind of blob of dirt that had things on it, and you couldn't quite make out what it was. It seemed a little bit confusing, but you sort of saw this road going into it, and this was apparently where something macabre had happened. And we're going to end off there for right now. I'm going to do another episode just dealing with the oil narrative called Inside the Oil Drum. So that'll be a lead into episode 3. Thank you for listening. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. If you're interested in additional content, please head on over to Patreon. There's some good stuff there. Join the conversations, join the exclusive community, and I hope you have a good weekend. Thank you for listening.